Well, great. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I say thank you and my excellencies Mr. Wahab Shahidul Alim as my lecturer in psycholinguistics. My name is Haris. I'm the fifth semester of TBA class. Now I will make a summary dealing with by assignment. As we know that we can choose one of them, namely making a video or writing summary, and I think it's better to make a video. Well, as we know that there are 5 materials that have been discussed by us in our groups, namely WhatsApp groups. For the first materials is talking about psycholinguistic and introduction to psychology. What is psychology? Psychology is taken from Greek roots or Yunani, namely psych and logos. Psych have meaning soul or mind, and logos have meaning word or study. And what is psychology? Psychology is scientific study of behavior and mental process. And why we have to know what is psychology, to know how we think and how we feel and how we behave, the psychology itself. And psychology is science of human behavior and mental process. Then you have to know what is behavior and what is mental process. Behavior is our action, our reaction, and our doing. And what is mental process? Mental process, it like our thought, our feelings, and our memories. That are the mental process. Then, what is the usage of psychology? The usage of psychology is to evaluate the common beliefs and the misconception of behavior and mental process itself. Then, what is the goals of psychology? The goals of psychology is to describe, to explain, to predict, and to influence the behavior and mental process. Then what is psycholinguistic? Psycholinguistic is the study of language from psychological perspective. Then you have to know what are the mental process and what are the linguistic theories. The mental process like short-term memories, long-term memories, then encoding, then retrieval, and the last is mental representation. And what are linguistic theories? What linguistic theories are phonology, morphology, syntax, semantics, and rules. Maybe that linguistic theories have been learned by you in last semesters. And what is the scope of psycholinguistic? The scope of psycholinguistic are acquisition and comprehension. Maybe that is the first material that have been reviewed by me. And the next one, the second material, says about language and the brain component word. You have to know as previous discussion about psycholinguistics are acquisition, storage, comprehension, and production of language. Neurolinguistic, like linguistic, psycholinguistic, neurolinguistic, and language and the brain. Now, as previous discussion about behavior, maybe you remind what is behavior. Now is language behavior. Language behavior is to investigate the mental mechanism. Then how to we perceive the word and store them to understand a sentence. Then to learn and read language and writing system mental organization. That are the language behavior. Then now we are going to talk about the behavior, the human brain. The human brain, as we know that there are four kinds we have discussed, namely neurons, then cerebral cortex, then longitudinal fissure, then corpus callosum. Neurons is the basic information processing units, and cerebral cortex account for language representation and processing. Then longitudinal fissure, it's the left and the right hemisphere of the brain. And corpus callosum, the bundle of nerve fibers that connect the two hemispheres. That is the second materials that have been discussed. And continue to the third materials is about language center. Language center, as we know that there are frontal, then parietal, then occipital, then temporal. Frontal is forehead to top, and it motor cortex. And next is parietal. Parietal is top to ear. It's sensory cortex. Then occipital in the back. It's visual cortex. And temporal in above ear. It's auditory cortex. Now, what is anatomy of language? Anatomy of language, there are three parts, namely Broca's area, Wernicke's area, then angular gyrus. Broca's area is left hemisphere, like speech production and articulation. It's a crucial area. And Wernicke's area, like critical language area, like comprehension, and it's associated with language processing, written or spoken. Then annular gyrus. It's multiple types, namely auditory, visual, and sensory. And it is close proximity and perceive word with different image. And now, what are language? Language are semantics, meaning how to make a new word, then grammar and social context. That is the third materials. And continue to the fourth materials is about lateralization and contralateralization. Each hemisphere is specialized in diff. So remember, lateralization right hemisphere and left hemisphere. Right hemisphere, like holistic reasoning, music processing, and processing of non-linguistic sound, and visual and spatial processing. And now left hemisphere. Left hemisphere, like analytical reasoning, temporal ordering, arithmetic, and language processing. It's left hemisphere. Then what you have to know, control life, lateralization in right hemisphere, it's control left side of body and visual field. Then left hemisphere, it's control right side of body and visual field. Remember that. And now contralization. Contralization is the connection between the brain and the body. It's almost completely. Remember, contralization is the connection between the brain and the body, and it's almost completely. Then the next is the fifth materials is about aphasia. Aphasia is language disorders. And what is language disorder? Language disorder is a damage to one of these areas, and it will affect the ability to produce or to perceive language. Aphasia is a language disorder produced by brain damage. Any language disorder to the brain caused by disease of trauma. Then many aphasics are selectively language impaired. Then aphasics do not have cognitive. Then, what is Broca's aphasia? Broca's aphasia and Wernicke's aphasia. Broca's aphasia, as we know, Paul Broca found that damage of the front of the left hemisphere, it's loss of speech, and the symptom of this is unable to express themselves by more than a single word in a time. Then, what is Wernicke's area? Wernicke's aphasia. Wernicke's aphasia is fluent speech, unfluent speech, and this is error in lexical and nonsense in word. Maybe that's all from me. More or less, forgive me. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.